The first gunshot didn't echo, it thudded, like a warning buried deep in the walls of Mercy General Hospital, as if the building itself knew something terrible had arrived. Rain streaked down the glass doors at the end of the corridor, distorting the shadows of three men stepping inside. They moved with purpose, with the quiet certainty of people who had done this before. Nurses at the far desk froze, pretending not to notice. A janitor slipped into a supply closet. Fear spread faster than the sound of footsteps. At the end of that hallway, behind a half-closed door, a patient lay hooked to machines that beeped steadily, alive, but barely. And standing guard at that door was a nurse no one bothered to look twice at. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet strength of people who refuse to let darkness win, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Because stories like this deserve to be heard. Her name tag read Claire Bennett. To everyone else, she was just another night shift nurse, soft-spoken, efficient, invisible. Her blonde hair was tied in a simple bun, her uniform crisp but unremarkable. She carried herself with the calm steadiness of someone who had seen suffering and learned to move through it without breaking. But the man in that bed, Michael Carter, age 38, wasn't just another patient. Not to the men walking down the corridor. 3 weeks earlier, Michael had been brought in after a hit-and-run that didn't look like an accident. Broken ribs, internal bleeding, a fractured skull. He had slipped into a coma, but not before whispering something to the paramedic that set everything in motion. Something about names. About money. About people who didn't forgive loose ends. Claire had read the file. She always read everything. The footsteps grew louder now, deliberate and unhurried. The three men stopped just short of the door. One of them, tall with a scar cutting across his cheek, pushed it open with 2 fingers like he owned the place. Claire didn't turn immediately. She adjusted Michael's foreline, her movements slow and precise. Only when the door creaked fully open did she glance over her shoulder. She didn't look afraid. That was the first thing that made them pause. The scarred man stepped in first, his eyes sweeping the room, landing briefly on Michael's still body, then settling on Claire. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. The room felt smaller suddenly, tighter, like the walls were leaning in. Claire moved slightly, positioning herself between the men and the bed. It was subtle, almost polite. But it was enough. Years ago, halfway across the world in a place most people couldn't point to on a map, Claire had stood in a very different doorway. The air had smelled like dust and burning metal. The sky had been the wrong color. And every shadow had hidden something that wanted to kill her. Fallujah had taught her how to read movement, how to measure intent in a single glance, how to act before fear had time to speak. Back then, she wasn't Claire Bennett, RN. She was Sergeant Claire Bennett, United States Marine Corps. The scarred man took another step forward, casual, as if visiting a sick relative. But Claire noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his right hand hovered just a little too close to his jacket. She had seen that posture before. Her heart didn't race. It didn't need to. It had learned long ago how to stay quiet when everything else was screaming. The machines beside Michael beeped steadily, unaware of the shift in the room. Rain tapped against the window like fingers drumming out a countdown. Claire took a slow breath. She didn't reach for a weapon. She didn't need one. Not yet. In Fallujah, she had cleared buildings room by room, not knowing what waited on the other side of each door. She had learned that the most dangerous moment wasn't the firefight, it was the second before it began. The moment when decisions were made, when hesitation could cost lives. This felt the same. Except now, the life she was protecting wasn't part of a mission. It was a man who had made mistakes, who had gotten tangled in something bigger than himself, who had been given one fragile chance to make it right. And Claire believed in second chances. The second man shifted, glancing toward the hallway, then back at Claire. Something in her stillness unsettled him. She wasn't reacting the way people usually did. People usually begged. People usually moved aside. Claire didn't. She took a small step forward, closing the distance by just enough to make it clear, this wasn't a suggestion. It was a line. The scarred man's smile faded. For a split second, something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. Not of faces, but of experience. He knew, in that instant, that this woman wasn't just a nurse. Claire saw it too. The flicker of calculation in his eyes. Good, she thought. Let him think. Because thinking meant hesitation. And hesitation was time. Down the hallway, somewhere far away, a phone rang. A cart squeaked. The normal sounds of a hospital continued, oblivious to the storm gathering in this small room. Claire's voice, when she finally spoke, was calm and even, but it carried weight. She didn't raise it. She didn't need to. She simply made it clear that this room was not theirs to take. The third man shifted his stance, uneasy now. The confidence they had walked in with was thinning, unraveling under the quiet pressure of someone who refused to yield. Claire didn't move her eyes from the scarred man. In her mind, she was already mapping the room, angles, distances, obstacles. The floor stand could be a barrier. The metal tray on the counter, a distraction. The doorframe, a choke point. Fallujah had taught her that survival wasn't about strength. It was about control. And right now, she controlled this space. Seconds stretched. Then, something unexpected happened. The scarred man exhaled slowly, his shoulders loosening just a fraction. He glanced at Michael again, then back at Claire. Whatever calculation he had made, it didn't end in violence. Not tonight. He gave a small nod, almost respectful, and stepped back. The others followed. No words. No threats. Just the quiet retreat of men who had come expecting weakness and found something else entirely. The door closed. The hallway swallowed them. And just like that, the storm passed. Claire stood still for a moment longer, listening to the fading footsteps, making sure they were truly gone. Only then did she turn back to Michael. The machine still beeped. His chest still rose and fell, fragile but steady. She adjusted his blanket, her movements gentle again, as if nothing had happened. But everything had. Outside, the rain began to slow. Days later, Michael woke up. It wasn't dramatic. No sudden gasp, no cinematic moment. Just a slow blink, a quiet return to the world. But when he looked at Claire, something in his eyes said he understood, maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to choose differently. Enough to speak. And when he did, the names he gave changed things. Not overnight, not perfectly, but enough to start unraveling the darkness that had nearly swallowed him. Claire never talked about that night. To her colleagues, she was still just Claire Bennett, the dependable nurse who worked too many hours and asked for nothing in return. But sometimes, late at night, when the halls were quiet and the lights dim, she would stand at that same doorway and remember another place, another life. And she would be grateful that this time, she had been able to protect life instead of taking it. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even in the darkest moments there are people who stand up and refuse to let evil win, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. And before this story ends, tell me in the comments, do you believe one person can truly make a difference? Because sometimes, all it takes, is one person who refuses to move.